I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A. David's going to be taking over the questions along with Milo. Milo isn't with us today. He's at the VA, and he hasn't told me what's going on. So he'll be with us when he can. So, David, what do you got in the way of questions for us?
All right, the first question we have here is from Animal Reaction Clips, and it says, Mr. Jevning, my comment got deleted. I have a claw for you since 2012 that is from a dog man. I personally took and saw it come off of this creature. Please get back to me. I need to release this to you.
Okay, I would say, if you have something, get a hold of me at either williamjevning@yahoo.com or wjevning@gmail.com, and then we'll go from there, if that's okay.
All right.
Does it say where they're from?
I can give Will the name from the person from YouTube, and if he wants to check out their YouTube page, he could look into it like that. This is from years ago.
Just the area of the country. Just a general area of the country is what I like, because we get a lot of reports of dog men's down here. So,
It did not say.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. We'll handle that one as best we can. That was from a YouTube comment, wasn't it?
Yeah, all of these are.
Okay.
The next one is from Rob Sword Dragger 8477, and Forrest, I'll direct this one to you first. He says, the gorilla has one, if not the strongest bite force out of the land mammals. I think 1,600 PSI. What kind of numbers could we estimate for a large alpha Sasquatch?
Ooh, good question.
That is a good question.
Well, that is a good question. I would think that it would be greater than a gorilla, because they tend to be larger than the gorillas. So I'm going to guesstimate that it would be greater, and I don't even want to put a guess out there and put a number on it, because I just don't feel like I would be accurate in doing that, and I don't know any of us that are going to be brave enough to go out there and say, would you please let me test your power?
Yeah, would you mind biting into this block here? We're going to test your bite pressure.
Yeah, it might be us that they'd be biting into.
Well, yeah, you don't want to become a test block. Before it was the ham sandwich, now you don't want to be the test block.
But I don't want to have that job, so.
But in all seriousness, all just aside, I would definitely say that it would be far greater than even the gorilla's bite. They've got that's pretty accurate, 1,600 PSI. So I'm going to say that it's probably anywhere in the 2,000 plus range. So
yeah, I think you're right in that. I get reports from people where they've claimed that they've seen them not just break bones of deer and such, but bite, when they're eating them, biting right through that stuff. So they've got to have tremendous bite force.
You will, could I talk to you about something later on about that I heard fairly recently, but I'd like to talk to you first.
Okay.
Well, the other thing you're dealing with too is you've got gorillas that are strictly vegetarian, and you've got Bigfoot that we obviously know is carnivorous. So it's going to have a larger bite force than a gorilla to bring down the prey that they do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things we see, we talk about Sasquatch. Gorillas have them too, the sagittal crest, which are that's the anchor point for those heavy jaw muscles.
Oh, yeah.
But, when we see a Sasquatch, they've got these huge jaws. And in all the artwork, it really, it's underwhelming. You know, the representation artists do of a Sasquatch's jaw, they're actually really massive. And they also have that, in many cases, not all, but many cases, that sagittal crest for those heavy jaw muscles.
Yeah, that attachment strictly for the muscles on the jaws. But, you know, that was saying that, you know, you go back to some of these, encounters that you see where people say, oh, well, they didn't have the high domed head like the gorilla head, but they had a rounder head, more like a chimpanzee head. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think it goes back to the fact that we have different, there's probably, different species of Bigfoot.
Yeah, there's all these different variants, so.
Yeah, it occurs to me, though, because in my encounter, I had a rather up-close and personal experience. And I had a good look at, even though it was backlit and it was tough for me to see, but I had a good look at the trapezius muscles in the back of the neck and the jawline. And, of course, the sagittal crest on the top of the head. But the way the traps looked, and I think that's right, the trapezius, that's at the back of the neck, those muscles above the shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But what it looked like to me, that these jaw muscles were muscular, almost like my own biceps were, as they were underneath the ears, almost like a jowl, but very, very thick, almost like maybe you'd see on cattle or horses, but larger, but really thick and strong jaw lines on it. So I wouldn't be surprised if a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch, perhaps had a much heavier bite, you know, a bite capacity of more than 1,600 pounds. You know, because it's absolutely shockingly big when you're that close and you can actually see it. So, yeah.
Well, that's why I said that it would probably be at least 2,000 plus, and I mean, at least, I mean, at a minimum. So, you know, far greater than the gorillas. So,
totally agree. All right, great answers, guys.
Keith, I have a question.
Yeah.
How wide did the mouth appear to you? I mean, you said your encounter was close.
Yeah.
How wide did the mouth appear to be to you? I mean, I'm talking about like from the corner of the lips, you know?
Right. You know, I couldn't really see the facial features again because it was backlit. Because my encounter was actually through a window where I actually pressed my face up against it and ended up being sort of nose to nose with it. And it's rather uncomfortable. But what I can tell you, just gauging from the size of the head, I would suggest that the window itself was 60 inches wide. The shoulders itself, I'd estimate was at least 54 inches across the shoulders. And the head, I would suggest, and if we can extrapolate from the size of the head to where its mouth was, I would say it would probably be, and I'm just holding my hands out in front of myself right now, kind of looking at it, I'd say 8-9 inches plus.
That's okay. Yeah, that gives me the answer I was looking for. So.
Yeah, Tracy had an up close and personal experience too.
Right. So, if I could ask you, I mean, was that similar to what you experienced, or something different? I mean, in the sense of the features of the creature, not necessarily the circumstance.
Well, you got to remember, I'm down here in Alabama, and my encounter happened in northern Alabama, or actually in Mississippi, right across the Alabama line. We don't get reports of really big ones down here. From my guess of my encounter, I think this thing may have been close to 8 feet tall. But he had a very broad mouth. I do remember that. I mean, I saw his teeth and they looked like chiclets, you know, but that's how big, you know, but his mouth was the one thing, because when I first saw him, he was kind of baring his teeth at me, or just maybe just had his mouth open, right. You know, and at one point in my encounter, he made his lips into like a big O shape and went, ooh, you know, when I pulled my pistol and pointed at him. And, but that's the one thing that fascinates me is the look on his face and the way his face looked. He had a very wide mouth,
how
compared to a human or even a chimpanzee. He had a very wide mouth, and
he had an ape-like mouth, though. Correct?
Yes, ma'am. Very much. Kind of. I have seen pictures that people have drawn, and there's some artwork that's been sent to me, which I lost. But yeah, he had a very wide, kind of like the lower part of his head, his face, his jaws. I won't say the top of his head was pointed, but it was not human.
The mouth looks pretty ghoulish most of the time.
You know, it's kind of almost a triangular shape, kind of a generality in terms of description. If you look at the Patterson Sasquatch, it kind of goes from that, you know, that sagittal crest, and it gets wide as it goes down to the jaw.
And that was one thing I noticed about that creature that I stood looking at. His trapezius muscles, the ones that go down his neck, you know, he didn't look like he had a neck. Mm-hmm. I mean, we used to call him head and shoulders, you know, talking about football players in high school, you know. That's kind of how he looked. But that's Keith, you and I need to sit down and talk for a little while.
I figure we do, Tracy. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting in the sense that it has no neck, and it seems to me that their head movement is somewhat limited. That they would prefer to turn their torso than their head, because once we realized we were looking at each other, it turned about 45 degrees away from me and sort of leaned back slightly. But it wasn't like an individual that would sort of lean back and turn his head and look at you. It turned its entire torso to look at me. So it gave me the impression right away, in retrospect.
Will, did I not tell you that same thing? Did I not tell you that he turned his body to...
Right. And here's something, I don't know. I know some...
Gorilla, that is a definite feature that gorillas do, because they've got that heavier muscling structure along the neck and the shoulder. And if you ever watch their movements, and, you know, that's why I say Bigfoot, I've always said this, and y'all know this, guys, that Bigfoot's an enigma, because they're kind of like you know, it's like in the primate species, whoever, and then a pattern of natural selection, they just threw all these components up in the air, and boom, they came together because they share components of gorillas, chimpanzees, humans, and a mixture of other primate species. But if you notice with a gorilla, they have got that heavy muscling along. I'm sorry, I just got attacked by a fly. I almost swallowed it. I'm sorry.
Come on, Miss Forrest.
Oh my goodness, I don't know where that came from. if you watch a gorilla, they do that. They have to turn their whole upper body really to make a movement. Chimpanzees not so much. They actually have more movement in their neck, like humans do. But gorillas, they have got such heavy muscling, and it's all due to the fact that they chew a lot of, they do a lot of chewing of heavy vegetation. So that's why they got those strong, muscles and that huge sagittal crest and such.
Well,
and
before we go on to the next question, I'm going to mention, Forrest, I know you've seen it. David, you've seen it. Keith, I think I sent you stills. Tracy, I'll have to send you some of the pictures. But Fred in Alaska got a film. It's a short video. It's not a very good one. Locals up there, I'm sure, just filmed it with their cell phone real quick. But when you and I first talked about this, about how at first it appears to be this really huge bear, right? Until it stands up.
When I first saw it, when Fred sent it to me, I thought, oh, look at that big, interior bear, because it looked blonde colored.
And it's massive.
It was blonde colored. But I thought, boy, that thing's big.
Until it stands up. And then it turns its whole upper body to the right, and it flails its arms out. You can see it's clearly not a bear.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the arm movement.
Adam stabilized it, and then Fred put that on his channel. But we'll get Fred to talk more about that when he joins us. But it's again, it really shows, some of those ape-like features, and like I said, the thing in the film, the stills, too, showed just how really massive this thing is. I mean, it's a big, and I guess the locals, they estimate it 10 feet. It could be bigger.
Oh, wow.
It's huge.
Well, you could tell. I mean, if you listen to I actually listened to the original footage, and just the language that was coming out of these. I know that there was at least two men there. There may have been more, but I think they were on four-wheelers, and they came up on this thing, and the language that was coming out of them, I wouldn't repeat, but it was like they were obviously very frightened. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because the hairy men up there are not nice. No.
No, and I asked Fred what it was doing. He said they told him it was pulling roots. And you can see at the beginning of it, it's down, obviously, on all fours, doing something, and then it stands up.
Yeah, that's why I thought originally it was a blonde interior grizzly. And,
yeah, I was kind of thinking that too.
When it stood up, I was like, oh no, and I saw those arms. No,
that's no bear. And I'll bet you that thing dwarfs a brown bear up there. I would bet on that.
Yeah.
Miss Forrest, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do gorillas have the same number of teeth as humans, and are their teeth the same size? I mean, like, you know what I mean? I mean, are their teeth proportionate to their body, like a human's teeth are?
Their teeth are proportionate to their body. Yeah, they're not gonna, and there are some variations in all the species. It's been so long since I've ever even looked up dentition. I'd have to look it up for you to tell you exactly whether they have the same amount as what we do. But basically, they do have the same dentition as we do. But it's on them. They're molars, and of course they're canines. You've seen them yawn and everything. They're canines, and all of the primates have much more pronounced canines. Our are very reduced, because we're obviously not going around biting each other, but they do use them, for biting each other.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Well, now I do remember from my encounter, I could see the canine teeth, and could see his front teeth, but they weren't really pronounced like a canine would be. They weren't that much longer. They were just kind of big, just kind of like prominent in their mouth. They weren't long. They didn't stick out like fangs or anything, but.
Well, they'll have the same incisors, front incisors, and you said they look like chiclets, and you hear that a lot about, and Will, you know that with people will say, oh, they look like they had a mouthful of chiclets.
Or Lincoln
Logs. They've got these big incisors in the front. You got your medials and then your lateral incisors, and then you got your canines on the outside of that. That's what our bicuspids are. And, and there are some people that do have, David Bowie was a person that had a very pronounced, I don't know why that name came to me all of a sudden. He was just like he flashed in front of my face here. But I do remember when he first started singing, and he actually had dental work done to reduce his canines because people made fun of him all the time about his canines in his mouth. Some people do have.
They look like a vampire.
Yeah. And a lot of people will have dental work to reduce those. But unfortunately, primates don't have that option. So most primates, let me say that, we are primates. So they don't have a dentist they can go to and say, please file these down. I don't want to look like that. But, you hear, Will, sometimes people say that, and I don't know whether maybe it's a sexual dichotomy because like in most monkeys and other apes, your females don't have as pronounced a canine as the males do. But a lot of with the most of your monkeys and your apes, you'll see them in a lot of these videos that the males do a lot of yawning.
Right.
And that's actually, they do that for a reason because they're showing their, look at me. I'm the
showing
big
their tools.
one. Look at my tools here in my mouth because I can rip you a new one, if you really want to mess with them. The mandrills do that all the time. All your drills and your mandrills will do that, and your baboons. And you want to see some canines. Now, those babies have got some. And your gorillas have huge canines. And there's plenty of chimpanzees that do, too.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. So, but yes, as far back to your original question, their teeth, the size of their teeth is based on the size of the animal. Yeah, you're going to look at you pull a molar out of a gorilla's mouth and compare it to a human's. They're not going to be the same size. They're way substantially larger because of the type of feeding that they're doing. They're chewing on a lot of very fibrous vegetation. You see them all the time. They just pull limbs off the tree and then just start stripping the leaves. And you hear stories about Bigfoot doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say they have 4 to 6 more teeth than we do, but I can't remember for sure.
Well, I don't remember for sure either. I'd have to go look it up. I'm sorry. I'm not an encyclopedia.
Yeah, I think they do. I want to say it's either 2 or 4 more than we do. It's not a huge number more, but it is a difference.
I just remember the teeth that I saw of this creature. They were much wider than like human teeth are. Much bigger.
Yeah.
But they appeared to be worn down. So it's like there wasn't much tooth between the edge of it and the gum.
I've heard they're about the size of a quarter, something like that.
This one, no, not that big. Like chiclet chewing gum. That's about the width and size of his teeth. Which you ever seen that movie, Dennis the Menace, when he puts chiclets in Mr. Wilson's dentures that he broke.
Yeah.
That's how wide the teeth appeared to me. And his whole mouth appeared a lot wider. But it didn't look that much different from ours.
You were saying that his teeth looked worn down. Did you get the impression that this was maybe an elder, mature male, maybe an old alpha, or what was your sense about perhaps the age of the animal?
Yeah, I did get that impression. You haven't heard my story, have you?
No, you know what? I've heard so many. I mean, you might get into it, and I might pick up on it, but no, I know.
I didn't mean that in a bad way. I mean, but yeah, when this happens, I faced him face to face from like 12 inches, and a few seconds later, I realized there was not one, there was about 4 around me, and they all ran away. And
guys, I'm going to interrupt you here just a second. I want to tell you, because I did have to look it up, because I knew we had 32 teeth. Gorillas actually have exactly the same number of teeth as we do.
Okay.
There you go. Okay. So there were 4 of them around you, Tracy, and the other 3, I guess, took off, and then this large one was in front of you. Was it a male, from what you can tell, or and like the age? What was your sense of that?
He was a male. He was definitely a male. And there was another with him, not as big as him, but pretty big. The other 2 were smaller, but I say smaller. I don't really know how to explain it. It was it's like a coach taking the football team out to dinner. You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, they were. They were definitely smaller and not as big as him. His second was almost as big as him. He looked a little slimmer when he was running away. The other 2 were significantly smaller, but still way bigger than I was.
So
all right, guys. Y'all want to move on to the next question? Will, we got time for one more? Or?
We got time for one more.
All right. This last one is basically a good quick one. This is from Gravity Cheeseburger. When someone relates an encounter to you, is there anything that you pay attention for that indicates they are just telling a story? And that answer is a big fat yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess, let's go around the table. What would you guys individually, if somebody's telling you a story, what would you listen for that might tell you it's a fraud? David, we'll start with you.
I'd be listening to the sound of their voice mainly. Whenever you've been through something traumatic and your memory recalls it, you're going to relive it, and it's going to come out in your voice and how you sound and how you speak. So that's one thing I look for.
Keith, what would you look for?
I would say that how the individual places themselves within the scenario. If the individual is saying that they face down this creature, or made the story more about themselves and built the story around themselves versus the experience itself, I would say that would be a cue for me to say this perhaps isn't genuine, because if you've actually experienced, you lose all sense of self. You have your brain basically shuts down and then it reboots sometimes later, and you essentially PTSD, right? So you're not really self-aware at that point. People will mention that they've wet themselves or otherwise, and that's a genuine reaction because it's very visceral. So if it isn't visceral, if it doesn't come from the gut, then it's not genuine.
Forrest, what do you think?
Well, I have to agree with both of them there, both David and Keith. The intonation of your voice has a lot to do with it. I think a degree of sincerity, and oftentimes the emotional response that you hear. And people that have a tendency to exaggerate, and I think you know exactly what I'm talking about because we've had some.
Oh, yeah.
That just get outrageous about, I saw this many Bigfoot when, anyway, but you know what I'm saying, when they just tend to start, if the story just starts tending to get more exaggerated, then I'm lost there at this point. I'm just like, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, that was a nice story. Okay. Because I'm no longer believing it, you know.
Well, for myself, I've heard so many stories over all these years. I listen for similarities. Because you have a creature out there, a wild creature, it's going to have certain behaviors, it's going to have certain characteristics about it, and then how the person responds when they get into this situation. So, all those answers that you gave are great. It's like Keith said, the world kind of stops the first time you run into one of these things. I know for me it did. I literally forgot everything except the very, very focal point of my eyes looking at that thing. The rest of me kind of ceased to exist. And I listened for like behavioral things, like how do the people behave, how the creatures behave. And I'll give you an example, stories like where, we won't mention names, but there were people who were in a car and supposedly were surrounded by the car at night. And then they were scared to death, had guns, but they didn't want to shoot. They drove, I think, 50 feet and then stopped and turned the car off. I'm telling you what, if my butt's puckered up, I'm not going to stop after 50 feet. I'm going to tear ass down the mountain and get out of the area.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, that's like a gigantic red flag to me. If you're either in fight or flight mode with these things. And, I know in my encounter, my first one, I walked into a situation that was a holy crap moment. And then I tried to extricate myself by thinking, maybe if I shoot in the air, they'll go away. They didn't. Another one came out. Then it was in flight mode. Then it was, my only thought was just to get the hell out of there as quick as I could, hoping it wasn't going to be lunch. And, so I listened to people. Now we've had people interviewed where they were reliving their account and were literally in tears. And to me, that's probably the most genuine encounter you can, unless the person is really some kind of a psychopath and can do that. And then you have to, but then there are other cues in there, what they have to say that would indicate that. So, in most cases, you can really tell by listening to somebody, they relive that fear. And like you guys all said, it's traumatic, and especially trying to relive it.
It's a really primal response.
Yeah.
It strikes to the core of the essence of your being that you are.
It absolutely does.
Unlike any type of fear, I've been afraid in many times in my life, but nothing like this. This basically, the whole computer reboots afterwards, essentially.
Oh yeah. There's nothing that compares to it.
Was it like you couldn't wrap your brain around what your eyes were showing you?
It kind of short circuits your thinking.
Right.
I was thinking, nothing in my mind, nothing I know has ever taught me to be ready to see something like this. What the hell is this?
No, there's no preparation for that. And it's like having PTSD afterwards.
It is.
You can't talk. Who do you talk to about that?
Oh, and I did. I ended up on seeing a psychiatrist and being on drugs.
Oh yeah.
Because
I can see that, sure.
Of that crap that happened to me. I was.
What's that, Forrest?
I said I call you Will and dump on you.
That's right. That's right. Well, we've all had this experience, so that's the bottom line, folks. I don't know, I've brought so many people through their experiences over the years because we can relate to one another. And
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I hate to use the example, but it's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous. An alcoholic can't talk to a non-alcoholic because they don't understand. Same with a combat vet. You can't really talk to a non-combat vet because you don't understand. You weren't there.
Yeah.
Now, with these things, so, that's why we encourage people to contact us if you've had an encounter. Now, whether you want to be on the show or not is irrelevant. Just talking about it, getting through that experience. And talking about it really does help you kind of get back, on the normal path of your life, where this thing will stop you. I mean, it'll stop you cold.
Yep.
It'll change.
There are still times I think about it, and it gives me shivers. I've had panic attacks because I think about it. And
I had my first encounter 50 years ago this coming December, and I still have nightmares occasionally about that.
Yeah, you'll never stop thinking about it. You just learn how to cope with it.
Yeah, it doesn't go away. It just doesn't. So in a way, all of us that are kind of a support group for one another.
Yeah, every night that I come home from work after midnight, and I go out there and have to get out of my truck and open up the gate, my head is on a freaking swivel.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm that way constantly. Anytime I'm in the woods, my head is, I'm constantly looking.
Yeah. It changes your perception of the world after you've had that experience.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I hate to say it, but we are out of time. I'll try to get David. David, I'll put your email on Facebook, and we'll try to get Milo's up too. And also, you can, folks, if you have questions, you can send them to me also, and I'll send them to David, Milo. But my email is either williamjevning@yahoo.com or wjevning@gmail.com. So, send all the questions you like. I mean, if it's something that, like Tom used to say, there's never a dumb question. And it doesn't hurt to repeat a question because there's lots of new people that listen and maybe they haven't heard, the question that's being asked where others may have, heard it a dozen times.
Yeah, if you have questions and you want to send them to me, my email is dsjcr2022@gmail.com.
All right, guys. Well, is there anything final before we wrap up?
Good question.
I would like to ask everybody to hit me with a text at my number. Will, you said you sent it to them.
You're talking about
hit me with a text and just
okay.
just tell me who you are.
All the listeners out there. Well, we can put your number out there if you want all the listeners to text you too. But
oh no, please don't do that. No, but all the guys in the group, please hit me with a text so I can store your number again because I screwed up. So, but Keith, Miss Forrest, please hit me with a text. Just say, hey, this is whoever.
Well,
and
how can I text you if I don't know what your phone number is? You send me your phone number.
Oh, I think I sent it to you first, I believe.
Yeah, he sent it to you.
Just now you sent it? Okay.
Let me check here.
Hold it. Keep your britches on, boy.
Yeah, hold on. Yep, I sent it to you.
It's Miss Forrest. It's the same number. It's the same number.
9105.
Oh, Forrest is going to give it out to everybody.
Yes, ma'am. Everybody's got it now. That's it, Miss Forrest.
Everybody call Tracy.
This is going to be fun right here.
All right,
I think I need to go to the store and buy some beer to get ready for this one.
Okay.
Well, what was that saying you came up with earlier, Tracy? We weren't recording, but you were talking about Forrest.
Oh, just ease out on the clutch. It's in gear. Just ease out on that clutch.
I got to remember that. That was great. All right, everyone.
Holy I'm a teaspoon away from losing my mind.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and sit in with us next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open.